Buonasera a tutti. Vedo la dottoressa Barbieri che arriva con passo felpato. Sì. Good evening, everybody. I would start. Very pleased to see that our new room is full on a Friday afternoon, but it's full because we are very honored to have with us the president of the Committee of the Region, Vasco Alves Cordeiro. So let me give him a very warm welcome at the Institute, together with the Deputy President, whom I just met, Mr. Luca Menesini, and with the Secretary General, Petr Blitzkowski. But Petr, you have to teach me how to pronounce it, because it's... let me introduce myself. For those who don't know me, I'm not Christine Faber, so but she will follow me. And I mean, she will moderate this meeting this afternoon, and the speech of the president of the Committee of the Region, which is the Florence speech. So we have to be very grateful to him that he came to see us, that he came to Florence, that he will speak in a very official way about the role of the committee and of the local authorities. You may know, in the European framework, you may know that President Cordero already visited us in April, because the committee is possibly the last European institution that deposited the official document in the historical archives of the European Union. And as you might know, we host the historical archives in Villa Salviati. Those of you who have not visited it, please go and see it, because it's really worth, not only from the, let's say, artistic point of view, but also for the meaning, because hosting the historical archives is really something that contributes to the creation of the European spirit, which is one of the reasons why the EUI, the European University Institute, was created. We will have a pleasure of listening to the words of the president of the committee, who chairs the organization which should collect the vision, the needs, and the ideas of the local communities and of the citizens, because the local authorities is the democratic level which is closer to the citizens. And this is something extremely important. Also, let me tell you also something personal from my point of view, because as I was explaining to the deputy president, to the vice president, at a certain period of my career, I was a diplomat, and I decided I wanted to do something more concrete. You know, foreign policy is fine, but I mean, I wanted to do something more concrete. So I stood as a candidate in the municipal elections. The mayor of Fiesole remembers this period. And I was elected in the end, and I was also elected as deputy mayor. Then that didn't last long. But then I continued as a city councillor, and I wanted to do it because really, if you do that, you really are close to the needs of the citizen. I mean, my interlocutors were ordinary citizens who came to us with their needs and their instances, and I thought it was a very concrete part of my professional life. This is also the idea of the Institute. We're undergoing a new strategy with our new president, and the idea of the Institute is to collect the ideas of the civil society, of the NGOs, of the local authorities, to bring this idea and produce something which is not purely academic, but something that is relevant for policy making. So I think that, Mr. President, we are very much in line with the activity that you do, the one that the Institute is trying to perform. We thought that it was good to host you in this building, and it's not only for the charm of this building, because I think that all of our buildings are very charming and interesting, but because this is a new building. No, it's an old building, but as you see, this has been very recently restored. And this building hosts our third pillar of activity, which is training. Training for present and future policymakers, we like to think. So we train here people who are already professionals, or in our master program, people who will be professionals, hopefully. And we are helping them in this endeavor. This kind of activity is performed mainly by the school, which is hosted here, the School of Transnational Governance. And we had already envisaged with an association of cities of which we spoke briefly over lunch, Eurocities, to have here training for officials and also politicians at the local level here at the Institute, at the STG, on themes relevant for Europe and for the international affairs. So this is also a proposal for you. For your information, we just signed a memorandum of understanding between the committee and the Institute, where we intend to perform a number of activities together. So this is just an idea, but I give you our sincere and warm welcome here at the Institute, and we are very much eager to listen to your intervention. And then I would ask Professor Christine Fabre to sit in her place, it's not mine, and moderate the discussion which will follow your presentation. Thank you, Mr. President.
So thank you, Secretary General De Panta. Thank you, Marco, very much. And thank you, President Cordero, for being with us here today. I don't think we could be more honored to have a compassionate, dedicated advocate of citizens' voices at the regional level. You've been involved in politics for quite some time. You've been involved in the presidency of the regions since 2013, from my understanding, first in a vice presidential role, but also served in political roles on the front line of local politics in the Azores, where you're from. And so I think you're bringing a wealth of experience to us today. We're very, very open and welcome to hearing your remarks. And as Marco said, I don't think there could be a better venue and better place for this discussion at the School of Transnational Governance. Oftentimes when people think about transnational, they think about the level above international institutions, big IOs, the things that are happening up top. And they oftentimes forget the things that are happening kind of down below, which are equally important, resident, and critical to the way democracy and governance functions. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to you for your remarks. I will moderate for question and answers, but really a warm welcome to STG. Marco introduced us well, and it's a great honor to have you here today. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. It is truly an honor and a pleasure. I would like to start first greeting mayor, representatives from the local authorities, Vice President of the European Committee of the Regions, Luca Menesini, Secretary General Marco Del Planta, and Secretary General Petr Liskowski. Don't worry, I know him for some while and I still struggle with the pronunciation. Representatives from the academic community, professors, students, dear friends. Thank you so much, Professor Fabre, for your kind and generous introduction. I'm truly honored, as I said, to be here and to have the possibility to just share with you some thoughts and some ideas about the experience that I had in several positions in regional level and also at the European level with the presidency of the Committee of the Regions. We have just come down from the hills of Fiesole, where we have signed a memorandum of understanding, a cooperation agreement between the European University Institute and the European Committee of the Regions. So let me tell you that we may consider this as the first step of this cooperation between the two institutions. Let me stress one point that is very, very important for me. I do not intend to lecture. I intend to share some ideas, and I would like to hear from you your thoughts, your reflections about some of the issues that I will try to convey and I'll try to express. I speak before you today as someone who has dedicated his political career to his community and to the European project. I come from the Azores, an archipelago in the middle of the Atlantic, an autonomous region of Portugal, the best place in the world.
I concur.
Excellency.
Beautiful, yes.
Which I had the honor to lead for 8 years as president of the regional government, although I have been involved in regional politics, both in executive and legislative positions, for around 30 years. It is my engagement at political level that brought me one day into the European arena. And one thing leading to the other, I became president of the European Committee of the Regions about 2 years ago. That is a European institution that I think tends to be overlooked. So for 30 years, the European Committee of the Regions has been the political assembly of local and regional representatives. We have just celebrated our anniversary earlier this week, and therefore I am here today in Florence, full of the stories, hopes of local and regional leaders who are making Europe happen every day, everywhere. This is what makes me and what shapes my thoughts today. You may expect to hear a lot of solutions, but I actually bring questions. So when I think about the situation we are in Europe nowadays, 3 challenges come to my mind. The first one is enlargement. The second one is democratic legitimacy. And the third one is this idea of Europe of the regions. Let me go through them. First is the challenge of enlargement. Let me take a few steps back in history first. Throughout history, communities became cities. And here in Florence, we have a magnificent example. Cities of arts, cities of ideas, cities of sciences, cities trading with each other, sometimes, if not too often, fighting with each other. Then cities got together, building nations, building empires, nations exchanging with each other, sometimes, if not too often, fighting with each other. And once the fights had exhausted too many of us, devastating our countries and breaking our moral compasses, we decided to get together again. This time as one single community, guided by ideas that have roots here in Florence. However, the world we live in today is not the hopeful and peaceful that the way we may have thought it could become. We have reached the sad milestone of 1,000 days of war on the European continent, and Putin is now launching intercontinental ballistic missiles into Ukraine. War rages in many other parts of the world, Gaza, Sudan. Democracy is being toyed with by wannabe dictators or even fully fledged ones across the world and even within the European Union. The fundamental ideas and values that have shaped the European project do not seem to make consensus anymore. The idea one could get is that the lines of defense of a certain model of society based on tolerance, respect, democracy, peace, solidarity are under pressure, and some of them may already have been broken. In that turmoil, reason seems to have prevailed in some minds, and therefore we can only welcome the renewed impetus that is given to the enlargement process of the European Union, of course. This is not only a tribute to the courage of the Ukrainian people or a recognition of the progress made in the Western Balkans. Enlargement is not only a moral duty, it is a geopolitical necessity, and it is a strategic investment, not only for candidate countries, but for current member states, for all citizens, and for the sake of our union. But with that comes an obvious responsibility and the real concern, the need, the imperative of reforming the governance of the European Union. It is not ready, I think, for 30 or 35 member states. One may even question if it was ready for 27. Governance, policies, resources. If we want enlargement to strengthen Europe, every aspect must be looked at carefully. And I know that there is no shortage of ideas on how to approach this. In Florence, 3 years ago, under the auspices of the European University Institute, a citizens panel gathered here as part of the Conference on the Future of Europe. Glorious name. What happened with it? What happened with the largest democratic experiment in Europe that was supposed to reform our union after one member state had left us? What happened to the great ideas that were supposed to make our union fit for the future, with new competences, new resources, a reinforced democratic structure? I had the honor to take part in it, representing the European Committee of the Regions, and I could witness the vitality of the exchange, the ambition to make Europe better, and with a stronger contribution of regions and cities. And I am not necessarily talking about the idea of the European Commission to launch a network of local councillors, by the way, in parallel to the one that the European Committee of the Regions had already created. As time goes by, it feels like a wasted opportunity. It was the trust of European citizens that was at stake. And I hope that leaders in Brussels and in national capitals will be capable to break the inertia we are in, looking away from the electoral cycles and sit together to craft this so ambitious future of the European Union. The enlargement will not be a success if we look at it with recipes of the past. We need new approaches to policies, such as cohesion or agriculture. We need new resources to deliver results. I mean, own resources that may bring new opportunities to development, but also an added responsibility towards everybody, and therefore a deepened sense of belonging. It will also, and this is not irrelevant, make the union less dependent of the goodwill of national treasuries. There is an evident need of a new model of governance with all levels of powers involved to reinforce the democratic legitimacy of our union. Strengthening our union brings together not exactly a new challenge, not exactly a concern that is new, but puts more clearly the need to address the question of the democratic legitimacy. Again, here, I will not go through a theoretical understanding of the concept. You are far more better placed to do that than me, but one thing is evident. Democratic legitimacy relies on the meaningful participation of all relevant actors and in a proper, functional, and adequate process of checks and balances. I have told you in my introduction about the historical pattern that led from communities to cities, from cities to nation states, from nation states to the European project. As the European Union consolidated itself, institutions were reinforced, competence extended to answer to evolving challenges. In 1994, following the entry into force of the Maastricht Treaty, the European Committee of the Regions was created thanks to the vision of the late President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, but also thanks to the advocacy of the German Länder. However, we have seen a growing tendency to centralization in the European Union, a tendency to increase the use of executive policymaking, especially in the hands of the European Commission. For example, since the financial crisis and the creation of the European semester, the European Commission has increased its influence to overview national budgets and economic policy making by the member states. Over the years, the number of delegated and implementing acts that grant so-called legislative powers to the European Commission has significantly increased, especially in times of crisis, with limited, if not no scrutiny by the European Parliament, though it's tacit approval. With more crises emerging, we can expect a more recurrent use of some sorts of fast-track procedures. But that does not mean handing all powers to the European Commission. During the recent famous or infamous hearings of commissioners designate, we have heard members of the European Parliament asking the candidates for meaningful and loyal engagement in such emergency situations. The European Parliament even made it a clear point in its recent joint declaration with the European Commission on principle for cooperation. Through subsequent multi-annual financial frameworks, we have seen the management and allocation of funds in various fields becoming more and more concentrated at the level of the European Commission and its agencies. We have witnessed a silent transaction where nowadays the European Commission directly manages the most part of resources of the European budget when before they were managed by member states and regional authorities. And I am not speaking only since COVID-19. It happened before. With the Recovery and Resilience Facility, the European Commission was dealing directly with national capitals to design plans to invest billions of euros. The European Committee of the Regions consistently pointed the limit, if not the total absence of involvement and of regional and local authorities, depending on member states. And I could go on and on. One can, of course, make the case for this. The world is facing many crises that requires quick actions, especially with the climate emergency, but also with the new health threats or growing political instability. The evolution of our societies has led to the need to quickly react and answer. But let's not forget the famous saying, alone, you go fast. Together, you go further. And today, there are some signs of concern. Concern about a certain vision of Europe that is at stake. Concern about some would think that we can keep going towards more centralization, either in Brussels or in the hands of national governments. Concern about this for two main reasons. One, because of the substance of the issue, the idea of centralization, but also because of the process through which this is being made. Not transparent, not democratic, not accountable to the European citizens. We see this very clear when it comes to the future of cohesion policy. I am here resisting the temptation to go through this line and to start talking about the future of cohesion policy. What must be preserved, what must be improved. But let me just share with you my concern that under the disguise of efficiency and budgetary discipline, it threatens the contribution of local and regional authorities to the management of cohesion policy. It threatens the capacity of cohesion policy to deliver concrete results. It threatens a policy that ensures essential public services, hospitals, schools, waste management, a policy that supports small and medium businesses while being hubs for innovation. A policy that develops infrastructures, reinventing mobility, creating links between communities. A policy that makes Europe happening everywhere, every day, delivering public goods, ensuring cohesion among its people, its regions, its cities. A policy that delivers on a fundamental objective as per the Treaty of the European Union. It puts at risk this process and this tendency of centralization, the very idea of a European Union built with all its components, puts at risk the idea of a European Union made by everyone, made for everyone. And this brings us to the third issue I would like to share with you. This idea of Europe of the regions. You may consider my statement, my words, as an expression of a defender of the idea of Europe of the regions. As I keep stressing the importance of the involvement of regions and cities in European policymaking. Beyond nation states, an union made of its regional components. But let me be clear and let me have a word of alert. This idea is not without dangers. Let me explain. In such a model, pure and simple, you could see a direct power relationship between the European institutions such as the European Commission or the European Parliament and regional authorities, without the current intermediate level of national governments in between. This would risk creating an asymmetric dynamic in the absence of fully developed checks and balances at the European level, as they are often more developed at national levels. Therefore, I am not making the case for such a vision of, in this sense, a Europe of the regions. What I encourage and stress is a democratic method where each levels moderate each other. What I call for is multi-level governance. Some sort of federal structure in which each level of powers plays their relevant role, balancing each other and hence reinforcing the democratic legitimacy of the whole system. Multi-level governance is more than a theory, it's a fundamental one, and it's a matter of democracy. The Conference on the Future of Europe had already concluded that active subsidiarity and multi-level governance were fundamental principles for the functioning of the European Union and democratic accountability. It called for more channels for the involvement of local and regional authorities, notably through the European Committee of the Regions, calling for the meaningful participation of regions and cities in the EU policy and decision-making. It's not just a matter of pride for local representatives. It is simply the idea of trying to make better policies, of trying to have a better outcome. It is simply common sense, as local and regional authorities implement around 70% of EU policies. Local and regional authorities channel 50% of public investment, are responsible for 30% of public expenditures. How can you keep them out? Local and regional authorities have a word to say in the successful realization of the EU objectives. Take the European Green Deal, for example. We have countless examples of projects and initiatives at local level that help delivering results, from schools renovations in Bulgaria to hydrogen fuel trucks in France, with the recent floods in Spain, but also here in Italy and in Central Europe. Climate adaptation and mitigation policies are key. Again, regions and cities bear the vast majority of the responsibility for making it happen. They have no choice. As we can go about the various aspects in which regions and cities make the European project real on the ground. This idea of the Europe of the regions, built on multi-level governance, is ultimately the idea of a Europe that delivers better policies because they are done with the feet on the ground. Fairer policies because they are done by taking the pulse of people wherever they live. Stronger policies because they are ones that are made with all territorial realities in mind. This is the Europe of the regions I stand for, where all can play a role. A Europe that is fit for the future and stronger, democratically speaking. I started my intervention by stressing that I was bringing more questions than answers. I can only hope that that what I have shared with you may be of some use for your reflection, for your thinking. That is, in a nutshell, the spirit of the Memorandum of Understanding that we have just signed between the European University Institute and the European Committee of the Regions. And I can only hope that the challenges and concerns that I have shared with you will inspire a further look into multi-level governance, at the intricacies of local politics and how they are affected by transnational dynamics, and how the European project is shaped by its territories, its regions and cities. All politics is local in the end. This is the very essence of the European project. United in diversity means this: you take the variety of realities that make Europe and you bring them together for the greater good. You can only understand the state of European Union if you understand the state of its regions and its cities. That is the state of local and regional communities. The European project is constantly a work in progress. But progress does not mean bringing all the roads to one central point. Progress must account diversity and dynamism. Otherwise, we will always have blind spots, leaving some, if not all, behind. To conclude, I want to share a few words by a former president of the European Parliament, the late David Sassoli, a son of Florence. Quando saremo arrivati al termine della costruzione europea, ci sarà che l'Europa saranno le nostre città. Europe will be our regions and cities. Thank you so much for your attention.